I never thought my life would change so dramatically on a Tuesday afternoon. It was supposed to be like any other day. I left the office a bit early, looking forward to a quiet evening at home with Emma. Little did I know everything I believed in was about to crumble in the space of a few heart-wrenching moments. As I parked the car in our driveway, I noticed something unusual. There was a car I didn't recognize, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. My mind dismissed it as probably belonging to a neighbor's guest, but a nagging feeling urged me to pay closer attention. Opening the front door, I expected to hear Emma's voice or the familiar sound of music playing softly in the background. Instead, there was an eerie silence that made my footsteps echo through the hallway. I hesitated, feeling a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. The noise came from the bedroom, a soft murmur that didn't quite register at first. It was too low to be distinct, but enough to draw me in like a moth to a flame. I crept towards the bedroom door, my heart beginning to race. What I saw through the partially open door made time stand still. There she was, Emma, my wife of 7 years, wrapped in the arms of a man I didn't recognize. Kevin. His name flashed in my mind like a warning sign. Kevin, who I later found out worked in the same office as Emma. They were oblivious to my presence, lost in their own world of whispered words and stolen glances. Emma's laughter, a sound that used to bring me joy, now felt like a knife twisting in my chest. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in months. I couldn't move. Shock held me in its icy grip, rooting me to the spot as I struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. The walls seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with the reality of betrayal. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. How long had this been going on? Was I blind all this time, unaware of the cracks in our seemingly perfect marriage? Anger simmered beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of hurt and disbelief. Time blurred as I stood there, grappling with the shattered fragments of my life. Eventually, a surge of adrenaline propelled me into action. I stepped back quietly, closing the door with a soft click. My mind was surprisingly clear amidst the chaos of emotions. I knew what I had to do. Leaving the house, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The world outside was ordinary. People walked their dogs. Children played on the sidewalks. But inside me, a storm brewed. I drove aimlessly for a while, the scenery passing by in a blur, until I found myself parked outside a coffee shop. Inside, the buzz of conversation and the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans enveloped me. I ordered a black coffee, needing its bitter taste to ground me in reality. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through contacts until I found the number I needed. "Mr. Thompson, it's Jake. I need to see you as soon as possible," I said, when the familiar voice answered. Mr. Thompson was our family lawyer, a man I trusted implicitly. 15 minutes later, I sat across from Mr. Thompson in his office, recounting what I had seen. His face remained impassive, professional courtesy masking any personal reactions he might have had. "I need to know my options," I concluded, my voice steadier than I felt inside. Mr. Thompson nodded, his gaze piercing. "Jake, what you've described is undoubtedly distressing. Infidelity is grounds for divorce, and we can start preparing the necessary documentation." As he outlined the steps ahead, gathering evidence, filing for divorce, and protecting my assets, a strange sense of detachment settled over me. This was no longer my life as I knew it. It was a legal battle, a fight for justice in a world turned upside down. Leaving Mr. Thompson's office, I felt strangely lighter yet burdened by the weight of betrayal. Emma's face flashed in my mind, the woman I loved, the woman who had shattered my trust in the blink of an eye. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, sleep eluded me. The image of Emma and Kevin haunted my thoughts, an endless loop that played over and over. But amidst the pain, a flicker of determination ignited within me. I would not let this betrayal define me. I would seek justice, not just for myself, but for the love I once believed in. Tomorrow would be the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim my life, piece by shattered piece. But for now, I closed my eyes and let the darkness swallow me, hoping that sleep would bring clarity or at least respite from the storm raging inside my heart. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, emotional turmoil, and moments of painful clarity. Each morning I woke up with a heavy heart, the weight of betrayal settling in deeper with every breath. But amidst the chaos, a plan took shape. A plan that would bring closure to this agonizing chapter of my life. Mr. Thompson had wasted no time. He dispatched a private investigator to gather evidence discreetly, documenting Emma's meetings with Kevin, capturing their moments of intimacy on camera. Each piece of evidence, while painful to review, fueled my determination to see justice served. Meanwhile, Emma's behavior oscillated between frantic attempts to reconcile and icy silence. She pleaded for forgiveness, begged me to give our marriage another chance. But the trust I once had was shattered irreparably, buried beneath the wreckage of her infidelity. "I don't know who you are anymore," I told her one evening, her tear-streaked face a painful reminder of the woman I thought I knew. Her protests fell on deaf ears as I focused on the legal proceedings. Divorce papers were filed, and negotiations began over our shared assets, our house, savings, even our beloved dog Max. It was surreal, watching our life together unravel in legal documents and court dates. Through it all, I maintained a facade of composure, a mask I wore to shield myself from the raw edges of grief and anger. Friends and family offered their support, but their words of comfort seemed hollow against the backdrop of betrayal. One afternoon, as I sorted through paperwork in Mr. Thompson's office, he handed me a folder. "This is the final report from the investigator," he said gravely. I opened the folder with trembling hands, bracing myself for the visual confirmation of Emma's deceit. Photographs captured moments of tenderness between Emma and Kevin, a shared meal at a restaurant, a stroll through the park hand in hand, even a kiss exchanged in a secluded corner. The images cut through me like shards of glass, each one a testament to the betrayal that had torn apart my marriage. But amidst the pain, a sense of closure washed over me. I no longer needed to doubt or question. The truth was laid bare before me. That evening, I confronted Emma with the evidence. She sat across from me at the dining table, her eyes wide with fear and regret. "Jake, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake. I love you. I swear." I stared at her, searching for the woman I had loved so deeply. But all I saw was a stranger, a woman who had chosen another man over the vows we had sworn to uphold. "I've seen enough," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "There's nothing left for us to salvage." Her tears fell in silent streams as I gathered my belongings and walked out the door. It was a scene I never imagined, a marriage shattered beyond repair, a future rewritten in pain and betrayal. In the days that followed, I moved out of our home, finding solace in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. The emptiness echoed around me, a stark reminder of the life I had lost. But with each passing day, the sharp edges of betrayal began to dull. I threw myself into work, finding refuge in the familiar routine of deadlines and meetings. Slowly, the ache in my heart began to lessen, replaced by a quiet resolve to rebuild my life on my own terms. Weeks turned into months as the divorce proceedings progressed. Emma and I rarely spoke, communication reduced to terse emails exchanged through our respective lawyers. The once vibrant woman I had married became a distant memory, a ghost I struggled to reconcile with the reality of her actions. Through it all, Mr. Thompson remained a pillar of support, guiding me through the legal complexities with unwavering patience. "You're doing the right thing," he assured me during one of our meetings. "This is about reclaiming your dignity and moving forward." His words resonated with me as I signed the final divorce papers. The weight of the pen in my hand felt symbolic, a closing chapter, an end to a painful saga that had reshaped the landscape of my life. Standing outside the courthouse on the day the divorce was finalized, I took a deep breath, letting go of the bitterness and resentment that had consumed me for so long. The sun shone overhead, casting a warm glow over the steps ahead. I walked away with a lighter heart, knowing that I had emerged stronger from the crucible of betrayal. Emma's choices had left scars, but they had also taught me resilience and the unwavering belief that true love, when it finds its way back to me, would be worth the pain I had endured. As I drove home that evening, the weight of the past began to lift. The road stretched out before me, a path untrodden and full of possibilities. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope, for healing, for redemption, and for a future where trust would bloom once more. With the divorce finalized, I found myself at a crossroads, emotionally drained yet determined to forge ahead. The months following the end of my marriage were a period of introspection and slow healing. I immersed myself in work, throwing myself into projects that demanded my full attention. It was a welcome distraction, a respite from the echoes of betrayal that still lingered in the corners of my mind. But healing isn't linear. There were days when the pain felt fresh, moments when a familiar scent or a passing resemblance would trigger memories I struggled to suppress. On those days, I sought solace in long walks through the quiet streets of my neighborhood, letting the rhythm of my footsteps drown out the noise within. Friends and family rallied around me, offering their support in ways both subtle and profound. Their gestures, invitations to dinner, shared moments of laughter, and quiet reassurances became lifelines in a sea of uncertainty. They reminded me that I was not alone, that the fractured pieces of my heart would eventually mend. Among them, Mr. Thompson remained a steadfast presence. Beyond his role as a legal advisor, he became a mentor of sorts, guiding me through the emotional aftermath of betrayal with empathy and wisdom. Over cups of coffee in his office, we discussed not just legal strategies, but the intricacies of rebuilding a life shattered by infidelity. "You've come a long way," he remarked one afternoon, his gaze steady and encouraging. "Reclaiming your life takes time, Jake. Be patient with yourself." His words struck a chord. I had spent countless nights dissecting the past, wondering what I could have done differently, replaying conversations and moments in a futile attempt to make sense of it all. But Mr. Thompson's counsel offered a different perspective, a reminder to focus on the present and the possibilities ahead. In the midst of my personal turmoil, I discovered unexpected sources of strength. I joined a local running club, finding solace in the rhythm of pounding feet and the camaraderie of fellow runners. The physical exertion provided an outlet for my pent-up emotions, a release valve for the stress that had settled in my shoulders. Weekends became opportunities for exploration. I visited museums, hiked trails in nearby parks, and attended concerts alone or with newfound friends. Each experience, however small, was a step towards rediscovering the passions and interests that had taken a back seat during my marriage. Yet, amidst the semblance of normalcy I was rebuilding, there remained moments of vulnerability. Dating, when I eventually dipped my toe into that uncertain pool, felt like navigating uncharted waters. I approached it tentatively, wary of repeating past mistakes, but also hopeful for the possibility of connection. Through it all, Emma remained a distant figure, a specter from a past I was learning to leave behind. Our interactions were minimal and strictly businesslike, confined to necessary discussions about the division of assets and the logistics of untangling our lives. One afternoon, as I packed the last of my belongings from our former home, I stumbled upon a photograph tucked away in a forgotten drawer. It was a picture from our honeymoon, a smiling Emma, radiant and carefree, standing against a backdrop of turquoise waters and white sand. For a moment, I allowed myself to linger over the memory. The woman I had loved fiercely, the dreams we had shared. But the ache had softened with time, replaced by a bittersweet acceptance of what had been and what could never be again. Closing the drawer, I carried the photograph with me. It was a reminder of a chapter closed, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As I drove away from the house that held so many memories, I felt a sense of closure settle over me like a comforting embrace. The road ahead was uncertain, dotted with possibilities and potential pitfalls, but I no longer feared the journey. Armed with newfound strength and the unwavering support of those who believed in me, I embraced the future with renewed hope and a quiet determination to rebuild my life, one step, one day at a time. Life had settled into a rhythm, a melody of work, personal growth, and tentative steps towards new beginnings. The pain of betrayal no longer dominated my thoughts, though its echoes lingered in quiet moments of reflection. Instead, I focused on building a future unburdened by the shadows of the past. Work had become both a sanctuary and a challenge. I threw myself into projects with renewed vigor, relishing the intellectual stimulation and the sense of accomplishment that came with each milestone reached. Colleagues noticed the change in me, more focused, more driven, a testament to the resilience I had discovered within myself. Outside the confines of the office, I explored interests that had long been relegated to the sidelines. Photography, a hobby I had abandoned during my marriage, became a creative outlet. Armed with a new camera, I captured moments of everyday beauty, the play of light on city streets, the quiet serenity of dawn breaking over the horizon. Weekends were reserved for adventures, hiking trails that wound through towering forests, discovering hidden gems in quaint towns, or simply lounging in a cozy cafe with a good book. Each experience enriched my life, expanding the boundaries of my world beyond the confines of heartbreak. Friendships blossomed unexpectedly. I forged deeper connections with old friends and embraced opportunities to meet new people. Shared laughter and meaningful conversations filled the void left by solitude, reminding me of the joy found in human connection. Dating remained a tentative exploration. I approached it with caution, mindful of the lessons learned from my past. Each encounter offered insights into myself, into the complexities of forging new relationships in the aftermath of betrayal. One particular evening stands out in my memory. A dinner date with Sarah, a colleague whose warmth and wit had intrigued me for months. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, we shared stories of our respective journeys, discovering common ground amidst the differences. Sarah listened with empathy as I recounted fragments of my past, carefully chosen words that hinted at the heartache without delving into the depths of pain. Her presence was a balm, a reminder that vulnerability could coexist with strength. As weeks turned into months, Sarah became a steady presence in my life, a confidant, a companion, and eventually a partner who understood the complexities of my history. Together, we navigated the uncertainties of building a future, one founded on trust, mutual respect, and a shared vision of what it means to love and be loved. Meanwhile, Emma's presence in my life dwindled to sporadic emails exchanged through our lawyers, a reminder of a chapter closed, a past I had chosen to leave behind. The bitterness that once consumed me had softened into a quiet acceptance, a recognition that her choices had led us down divergent paths. One sunny afternoon, as Sarah and I walked hand in hand along the riverfront, I felt a sense of peace settle over me like a gentle tide. The skyline shimmered in the golden light of dusk, casting a warm glow over the cityscape. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," I admitted softly, squeezing Sarah's hand. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the same contentment. Life has a funny way of surprising us. And in that moment, surrounded by the promise of new horizons and the embrace of a love built on resilience, I knew that I had finally found my way back to myself. The scars of betrayal had faded into insignificance against the backdrop of a future brimming with possibility. A future I was ready to embrace one step at a time. The passage of time had woven a tapestry of healing around me, its threads a blend of resilience, introspection, and the quiet strength found in moving forward. Life had settled into a new normal, a life enriched by meaningful connections, personal growth, and the pursuit of passions long neglected. Sarah had become a cornerstone of my world, a partner whose presence brought balance and joy into my days. Together, we navigated the intricacies of blending our lives, sharing dreams and aspirations that intertwined seamlessly. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah and I took a leisurely stroll through a local park, ablaze with the fiery hues of fall. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dried leaves and the promise of change. As we settled onto a weathered bench beneath a canopy of golden foliage, a sense of contentment settled over me. "I never imagined life could be this beautiful again," Sarah murmured, her gaze lingering on the landscape before us. I squeezed her hand, overwhelmed by gratitude for the love that had blossomed from the ashes of heartbreak. "Neither did I admitted, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. The past, once a landscape marred by betrayal and shattered dreams, had softened into a distant memory, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Emma's presence in my life had dwindled to occasional thoughts, fleeting reminders of a chapter closed with finality. In a quiet moment of reflection, I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak. Forgiveness, I realized, was not about absolving Emma of her actions, but releasing myself from the chains of resentment. It was a choice, a conscious decision to embrace healing and reclaim my peace of mind. Closure came unexpectedly one afternoon, as I sorted through old photographs tucked away in a forgotten drawer. Among them, I found a picture from our wedding day, the radiant smile on Emma's face, the promise of forever etched in our intertwined hands. Gazing at the photograph, I felt a surge of gratitude for the love we had once shared, a love that had shaped me, despite its imperfections. It was a bittersweet moment, a recognition of the beauty and fragility inherent in human connections. Setting the photograph aside, I carried the memory of our time together with a newfound clarity. Emma had been a part of my journey, a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. Her betrayal had shattered my illusions, but it also forged a resilience that fortified my spirit. Months turned into years, each season marked by milestones that spoke of healing and renewal. Sarah and I traveled to distant lands, exploring cultures and landscapes that expanded our horizons. We nurtured friendships that enriched our lives and immersed ourselves in passions that ignited our souls. Through it all, I continued to grow, not in spite of my past, but because of it. The scars of betrayal had faded into insignificance, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude for the resilience that had carried me through the storm. One evening, as Sarah and I sat by the crackling fire in our cozy home, I reflected on the journey that had led me to this moment. The warmth of her presence beside me was a testament to the healing power of love, a love built on trust, respect, and a shared commitment to nurturing each other's dreams. "I'm grateful for you," I murmured, breaking the comfortable silence that enveloped us. Sarah turned to me, her eyes soft with affection. "And I for you," she replied, her words a gentle reminder of the strength found in vulnerability and the beauty inherent in second chances. As I leaned in to kiss her, I realized that closure was not an endpoint, but a continuous journey, a journey marked by forgiveness, acceptance, and the unwavering belief in the transformative power of love. And in Sarah's embrace, I found a home, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the promise of a future filled with hope and endless possibilities. Life had settled into a rhythm of contentment and purpose, yet beneath the surface of tranquility, a quiet contemplation persisted, a reflection on the transformative journey that had brought me to this place of peace. Sarah and I had embarked on a weekend getaway to a quaint coastal town, a retreat from the hustle of daily life. As we wandered along the windswept shore, the salt-tinged breeze stirred memories of journeys taken and paths left behind. Sitting on weathered driftwood overlooking the expanse of ocean, I found myself drawn to thoughts of forgiveness, a concept that had evolved from a distant aspiration to a profound truth. Forgiveness, I realized, was not about erasing the pain or condoning the actions that had caused it. It was a deliberate act of liberation, a choice to release the grip of resentment and reclaim the power to define my own narrative. In the early days of rebuilding my life, forgiveness had seemed inconceivable, a distant beacon obscured by the shadows of betrayal. Anger had been a visceral response, a shield against the vulnerability that threatened to engulf me. But as time unfurled its tapestry of healing, I came to understand that forgiveness was not a pardon for Emma's actions, but a gift I gave myself, an act of self-love and self-preservation. Sarah listened with quiet empathy as I shared fragments of my journey towards forgiveness, a journey marked by moments of doubt and steadfast determination. Her presence was a testament to the healing power of love, a love that held space for my scars and celebrated the resilience that had emerged from the crucible of heartbreak. "I used to think forgiveness meant forgetting," I admitted, my gaze tracing the distant horizon where sky met sea. "But now I see it as a choice, to acknowledge the pain without letting it define me." Sarah reached for my hand, her touch a reassurance that transcended words. "You've come a long way," she murmured, her voice a soothing melody against the backdrop of crashing waves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting hues of amber and rose across the sky, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had led me to this moment, a moment steeped in the quiet beauty of forgiveness and the promise of new beginnings. In the days that followed, I continued to explore the contours of forgiveness, not as a destination, but as an ongoing practice of compassion and self-discovery. I revisited memories with newfound clarity, recognizing the complexities that had shaped Emma's choices and acknowledging the humanity in her flaws. Through forgiveness, I found closure, an acceptance of the past that paved the way for a future unencumbered by the weight of resentment. Emma's presence in my thoughts softened into a distant echo, a reminder of lessons learned and the resilience that had fortified my spirit. Sarah and I embarked on new adventures, each experience a testament to the boundless possibilities that awaited us. Together, we navigated the joys and challenges of building a life filled with shared dreams and individual growth. Our home became a sanctuary, a space infused with laughter, love, and a deep appreciation for the journey that had led us here. In quiet moments of solitude, I revisited the photograph from our wedding day, the promise of forever captured in Emma's radiant smile. It had become a symbol of gratitude, a reminder of the love that had shaped me and the resilience that had carried me through storms. As I traced the outline of Sarah's sleeping form beside me one peaceful night, I knew that forgiveness had been the key to unlocking the beauty and depth of love, a love that transcended the scars of the past and embraced the promise of a future illuminated by hope. And in the gentle cadence of her breathing, I found solace, a reassurance that forgiveness was not just a journey completed, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. Life had settled into a gentle rhythm of peace and fulfillment, guided by the steady compass of Sarah's love and the quiet introspection that had become a cornerstone of my existence. Each day unfolded with a sense of gratitude, a recognition of the blessings woven into the fabric of my renewed life. Sarah and I had chosen to celebrate our anniversary with a getaway to a rustic cabin nestled deep in the mountains, a sanctuary away from the distractions of daily life. Surrounded by towering pines and the symphony of nature, we reveled in the simple joy of being together. As we sat by the crackling fire one evening, the warmth of its glow mirrored the contentment that filled my heart. Sarah leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder, as we watched embers dance in the darkness. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she whispered, her voice a tender murmur against the backdrop of rustling leaves. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, overwhelmed by a wave of gratitude for the love that had found me amidst the ruins of a broken heart. "Nor I," I replied softly, my words a testament to the transformative power of healing and the resilience found in embracing second chances. In the quiet hours of that mountain retreat, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led me here, a journey marked by valleys of despair and peaks of profound revelation. Forgiveness, I realized, had been the catalyst for my metamorphosis, a decision to release the shackles of bitterness and reclaim the lightness of being. Emma's presence in my thoughts had evolved into a distant echo, a gentle reminder of the lessons learned and the growth that had blossomed from adversity. Our interactions, once steeped in the pain of betrayal, had given way to cordiality, a mutual respect born from the passage of time and the healing balm of forgiveness. Through introspection, I unearthed deeper truths about love and resilience. I came to understand that healing wasn't just about moving on, but about embracing the complexities of human emotions, the capacity to love fiercely, to stumble, and to rise stronger than before. Sarah's unwavering support had been a beacon on the storm-tossed seas of my past, a reminder that love wasn't just an emotion, but a steadfast commitment to weathering life's uncertainties together. We navigated challenges with grace, celebrating victories both small and significant, and finding solace in the sanctuary of each other's embrace. As the years unfolded, our home became a haven, a testament to the enduring power of love and the beauty found in shared dreams. We welcomed new beginnings with open hearts, travels to distant lands, shared hobbies that sparked joy, and the quiet moments of connection that bound our souls together. In quiet moments of reflection, I revisited the photograph from our wedding day, a relic of a time tinged with both innocence and promise. It had become a symbol not just of the past, but of the gratitude I carried in my heart for the winding path that had led me to Sarah, a path illuminated by the resilience that had shaped me and the transformative journey of forgiveness. On a balmy summer evening, Sarah and I stood hand in hand on the shores of a secluded beach, a place that had witnessed the ebb and flow of our shared life. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the sky, a canvas painted with the hues of gratitude and hope. "I'm grateful for you," Sarah murmured, her voice a melody that echoed the sentiments in my heart. "And I for you," I replied, my words a vow of devotion and a testament to the enduring beauty found in the intricate tapestry of our love. As we walked along the shoreline, the sand warm beneath our feet, I knew that forgiveness had been the cornerstone of my journey. A journey illuminated by the lightness of healing, the resilience born from adversity, and the unwavering belief in the transformative power of love. And in Sarah's embrace, I found home, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the promise of a future filled with hope, gratitude, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. Life had unfolded like a tapestry of unexpected beauty and profound gratitude. Sarah and I had settled into a rhythm of shared dreams and quiet moments, our home a sanctuary filled with laughter, love, and the gentle echoes of past hardships overcome. As our relationship deepened, so too did our explorations into the world around us. We embarked on journeys near and far, each adventure a testament to the resilience and love that had brought us together. One crisp autumn afternoon, we found ourselves in a bustling city known for its vibrant art scene. Sarah had surprised me with tickets to a play, an intimate theater tucked away in a historic district. The performance was poignant, a reflection of life's complexities and the myriad emotions that colored our shared journey. After the curtain fell and the applause faded into the night, Sarah and I strolled hand in hand through streets aglow with the warm hues of street lamps and the laughter of fellow theatergoers. The air was alive with possibility, reminiscent of the early days of our courtship, when every moment held the promise of discovery. Over dinner at a cozy bistro, we shared reflections on the play and the parallels we found in our own lives. Sarah's insight was a beacon, illuminating corners of my heart where shadows of doubt had once lingered. "You've grown so much," she remarked, her eyes soft with affection. "I admire your strength and resilience." I smiled, humbled by her words, and grateful for the unwavering support that had buoyed me through the storms of the past. "I couldn't have done it without you," I confessed, my voice a quiet acknowledgement of the profound impact she had on my life. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I continued to explore the contours of our relationship with a sense of wonder and gratitude. We delved into shared interests, attending art exhibitions, trying new recipes in the kitchen, and embarking on hikes that offered glimpses of nature's quiet majesty. Amidst the busyness of life, I carved out moments of solitude for introspection, a practice that had become a source of clarity and renewal. I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak, recognizing the silver linings woven into the fabric of my journey. Emma's presence in my thoughts had evolved into a gentle whisper, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through adversity and the growth that had bloomed from the ashes of betrayal. Our interactions remained cordial, marked by a mutual respect born from the passage of time and the healing balm of forgiveness. Through it all, Sarah remained a pillar of strength and a beacon of love, a partner who embraced my past with compassion and celebrated the person I had become. Together, we navigated the nuances of building a future founded on trust, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to nurturing each other's dreams. One evening, as we lingered on our balcony beneath a canopy of stars, Sarah placed a hand over mine, her touch a silent reassurance of the bond that bound us together. "I'm grateful for this journey," she murmured, her voice a melody that echoed the sentiments in my heart. "And I for you," I replied, my words a vow of devotion and a testament to the enduring beauty found in the intricate tapestry of our love. As we stood together, enveloped by the quiet beauty of the night, I knew that life's uncertainties had led me to Sarah, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the promise of a future filled with hope, gratitude, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. As Sarah and I navigated the seasons of our shared life, our bond deepened with each passing day. Our home became a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed off the walls, where dreams took flight, and where the echoes of past pain faded into distant whispers. One crisp spring morning, Sarah and I found ourselves in a quaint village nestled among rolling hills, a picturesque setting that seemed to embody the essence of renewal and possibility. We had escaped the city's hustle and bustle for a weekend retreat, seeking solace in the serenity of nature's embrace. Amidst blossoming cherry trees and fields awash with wildflowers, we wandered hand in hand, our footsteps weaving a tapestry of shared moments and quiet conversations. The air was alive with the symphony of birdsong and the scent of freshly turned earth, a reminder of life's eternal cycles and the promise of new beginnings. As we settled beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, Sarah turned to me with a smile that lit up her eyes. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly, her words a reflection of the gratitude that mirrored my own. I nodded, my heart swelling with a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had led us to this tranquil haven. "Every day," I admitted, my voice a whisper carried on the breeze. I never imagined life could be so beautiful. Sarah's laughter danced like sunlight through the branches above us, a melody that echoed the joy in my heart. Neither did I, she confessed, her gaze holding mine with unwavering affection. In the days that followed, we immersed ourselves in the rhythms of village life, sampling local delicacies at farmers' markets, exploring winding paths that led to hidden waterfalls, and savoring moments of quiet reflection beneath starlit skies. Amidst the tranquility of that weekend retreat, I found myself revisiting the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak. Forgiveness, I realized anew, had been the key that unlocked the door to healing. A journey marked not by forgetting, but by embracing the complexities of human emotions and the transformative power of resilience. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant memory, a reminder of the person I had once been, and the strength that had emerged from the depths of despair. Our interactions, when they occurred, were cordial, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. As our relationship blossomed, so too did our dreams for the future. Together, we envisioned a life filled with shared adventures and quiet moments of intimacy, a tapestry woven from threads of trust, mutual respect, and the unwavering belief in each other's potential. In quiet moments of solitude, I revisited the photograph from our wedding day, the promise of forever captured in Emma's radiant smile. It had become a symbol not just of the past, but of the gratitude I carried in my heart for the winding path that had led me to Sarah. A path illuminated by the resilience that had shaped me and the transformative journey of forgiveness. As Sarah and I stood hand in hand on the shores of a tranquil lake, the water shimmering like liquid silver beneath the midday sun, I knew that life's uncertainties had led me to her, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the promise of a future filled with hope, gratitude, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. And in the gentle cadence of her laughter and the warmth of her embrace, I found solace, a reassurance that forgiveness was not just a journey completed, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. Sarah and I had settled into a rhythm of shared joys and quiet contentment, our lives intertwined in a tapestry woven with threads of love, resilience, and the quiet strength found in embracing each day as it came. As the seasons turned and the years unfolded, our bond deepened with the ebb and flow of life's currents. We celebrated milestones, birthdays marked with laughter and cherished moments, anniversaries that spoke of enduring commitment and the beauty found in weathering life's storms together. One breezy autumn afternoon, Sarah and I found ourselves on a spontaneous road trip, a journey that meandered through rolling hills ablaze with the fiery hues of fall foliage. The open road stretched before us, a canvas painted with the promise of discovery and the whispers of adventures yet to unfold. Amidst quaint towns and winding country roads, we stopped at a roadside cafe nestled in the heart of a sleepy hamlet. Over steaming mugs of coffee, we shared dreams for the future, visions of a home filled with laughter, perhaps nestled among towering pines or overlooking a tranquil lake. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, her voice a gentle cadence that mirrored the rustling leaves outside, "about how far we've come and where we want to go next." I listened, captivated by the warmth in her eyes and the depth of her words. Together, we explored possibilities, traveling to distant lands, pursuing passions that ignited our souls, and nurturing dreams that blossomed in the fertile soil of our shared love. In moments of solitude, I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak. Forgiveness, I realized anew, had been the cornerstone of my journey, a choice to release the weight of resentment and reclaim the lightness of being. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant echo, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. Our relationship had become a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with compassion, where past wounds were healed with patience and understanding. Together, we navigated life's uncertainties with grace, drawing strength from the love that bound us together. As the years unfolded, our home became a refuge, a haven where laughter echoed off the walls, where dreams took flight, and where the echoes of past pain faded into whispers. We welcomed new beginnings with open hearts, travels that broadened our horizons, friendships that enriched our lives, and the quiet moments of connection that affirmed the depth of our bond. In the quiet hours of evening, as we sat beneath a canopy of stars in our backyard, I found myself lost in thoughts of gratitude, a profound appreciation for the winding path that had led me to Sarah, and for the resilience that had shaped me along the way. "I'm grateful for this journey," Sarah whispered, her voice a melody that echoed the sentiments in my heart. "And I for you," I replied, my words a vow of devotion and a testament to the enduring beauty found in the intricate tapestry of our love. As we stood together, enveloped by the quiet beauty of the night, I knew that life's uncertainties had led me to Sarah, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the promise of a future filled with hope, gratitude, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. And in the gentle cadence of her laughter and the warmth of her embrace, I found solace, a reassurance that forgiveness was not just a journey completed, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. As Sarah and I embraced the journey of our shared life, each day unfolded with a sense of purpose and gratitude. Our home had become a haven, a sanctuary where laughter danced through the rooms and the echoes of past hardships were softened by the warmth of our love. In the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, I often found myself reflecting on the winding path that had led me to this place of contentment. The lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak had shaped my understanding of forgiveness, not as a pardon for past transgressions, but as a powerful choice to reclaim my own peace and embrace the beauty of life's complexities. Sarah's presence in my life was a constant source of strength and inspiration. Her unwavering support had been a beacon in the darkest of times, a reminder that love could heal wounds and illuminate the shadows of doubt. Together, we navigated life's challenges with grace and resilience, forging a bond fortified by shared experiences and a deep commitment to nurturing each other's dreams. One crisp winter afternoon, Sarah and I embarked on a quiet hike through a snow-covered forest, a landscape transformed by the hush of falling snowflakes and the stillness of nature in slumber. The air was crisp and invigorating, each breath a reminder of the beauty found in embracing the present moment. As we trudged through the pristine snow, our footsteps creating a rhythmic cadence against the silence, Sarah turned to me with a smile that lit up her eyes. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked, her voice a gentle melody carried on the wind. I nodded, a surge of gratitude swelling in my chest. "Every day," I confessed, my words a quiet acknowledgement of the profound journey that had led us to this tranquil forest path. Sarah reached for my hand, her touch a silent reassurance of the bond that bound us together. "I'm grateful for this journey," she murmured, her voice a whisper of gratitude that mirrored my own. Together, we paused beneath the shelter of a towering pine tree, its branches laden with snow like delicate lace. In the stillness of that moment, surrounded by the majesty of nature's embrace, I found myself overwhelmed by a sense of peace, a deep-rooted acceptance of the past, and an unwavering hope for the future. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I continued to explore the contours of our relationship with a renewed sense of wonder and gratitude. We shared dreams for the future, perhaps a quaint cottage by the sea, where the scent of salt water mingled with the fragrance of blooming roses, or a cozy cabin nestled among mountains where the stars painted the night sky in hues of silver and indigo. Amidst the busyness of life, I carved out moments of solitude for introspection, a practice that had become a source of clarity and renewal. I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak, recognizing the silver linings woven into the fabric of my journey. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant memory, a reminder of the person I'd once been and the growth that had blossomed from the ashes of betrayal. Our interactions, when they occurred, were cordial, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. As the seasons turned and the world around us bloomed with the promise of spring, Sarah and I stood hand in hand on the threshold of a new chapter, a season of renewal and possibility, where the echoes of past hurts were drowned out by the symphony of love, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. And in the quiet moments of reflection and the gentle embrace of Sarah's love, I found solace, a reminder that forgiveness was not just a journey completed but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the beauty of life's ever-unfolding tapestry. As Sarah and I journeyed through the tapestry of our shared life, each chapter seemed to unfold with a deeper resonance, a testament to the resilience of love and the transformative power of forgiveness. Our days were woven with moments of laughter, quiet companionship, and the gentle cadence of shared dreams. One breezy summer evening, Sarah and I found ourselves on the shores of a tranquil lake, a shimmering expanse of water that mirrored the hues of the setting sun. The air was alive with the scent of wildflowers and the symphony of crickets, a backdrop that seemed to echo the harmony of our hearts. We had embarked on a spontaneous weekend getaway, seeking solace in the serenity of nature's embrace. As we sat beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient willow tree, its leaves whispering secrets carried on the breeze, Sarah turned to me with a smile that illuminated her face. "Do you remember where we started?" she asked softly, her voice a melody that stirred memories of our shared beginnings. I nodded, my heart swelling with gratitude for the winding path that had led us to this moment of peace and connection. "How could I forget?" I replied, my voice a gentle murmur carried on the wind. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Sarah reached for my hand, her touch a silent reassurance of the bond that bound us together. "I'm grateful for every step of this journey," she confessed, her words a testament to the resilience and growth that had shaped our love. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I continued to explore the contours of our relationship with a renewed sense of wonder and gratitude. We shared dreams for the future, perhaps a cozy cottage nestled in a sun-dappled meadow, where the scent of lavender mingled with the laughter of children, or a bustling city apartment overlooking a skyline painted in hues of gold and crimson. Amidst the busyness of life, I carved out moments of solitude for introspection, a practice that had become a source of clarity and renewal. I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak, recognizing the silver linings woven into the fabric of my journey. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant memory, a reminder of the person I had once been and the growth that had blossomed from the ashes of betrayal. Our interactions, when they occurred, were cordial, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. As the seasons turned and the world around us bloomed with the promise of new beginnings, Sarah and I stood hand in hand on the threshold of a new chapter, a season of growth, gratitude, and the unwavering belief in the beauty of life's ever-unfolding tapestry. And in the quiet moments of reflection and the gentle embrace of Sarah's love, I found solace, a reminder that forgiveness was not just a journey completed, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. Together, Sarah and I celebrated the beauty of our journey, the highs and lows, the moments of triumph, and the lessons learned. In each other's arms, we found a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with compassion, where past wounds were healed with patience and understanding. As we gazed across the shimmering lake, the sky ablaze with the hues of a setting sun, I knew that life's uncertainties had led me to Sarah, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the symphony of love, resilience, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. As Sarah and I embraced the serenity of our shared life, the passage of time seemed to weave our stories together with threads of resilience and unwavering love. Our days unfolded with a quiet rhythm, a testament to the enduring bond that had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. One brisk autumn morning, Sarah and I found ourselves in the heart of a bustling city, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and the vibrant hum of urban life. We had embarked on a weekend getaway, seeking inspiration in the art galleries and bustling cafes that lined the streets. Amidst the swirl of colors and the symphony of city sounds, Sarah's presence was a constant source of comfort and strength. Her laughter echoed through crowded galleries as we explored exhibitions that sparked conversations about life, beauty, and the intricacies of human emotion. Over coffee in a quaint corner cafe, Sarah's eyes met mine with a depth of understanding that spoke volumes. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly, her voice a gentle melody amidst the cacophony of city sounds. I nodded, my heart swelling with gratitude for the winding path that had led us to this moment of connection and shared reflection. "Every day," I replied, my voice a quiet affirmation of the journey that had shaped us both. Sarah reached for my hand across the table, her touch a silent reassurance of the bond that bound us together. "I'm grateful for every twist and turn," she confessed, her words a testament to the resilience and growth that had fortified our love. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I continued to explore the contours of our relationship with renewed vigor and appreciation. We immersed ourselves in shared passions, attending concerts that stirred the soul, embarking on hikes that offered vistas of breathtaking beauty, and savoring quiet moments of intimacy that affirmed the depth of our connection. Amidst the busyness of life, I carved out moments of solitude for introspection, a practice that had become a source of clarity and renewal. I revisited the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak, recognizing the silver linings woven into the fabric of my journey. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant memory, a reminder of the person I had once been and the growth that had blossomed from the ashes of betrayal. Our interactions, when they occurred, were cordial, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. As the seasons turned and the world around us shimmered with the promise of new beginnings, Sarah and I stood hand in hand on the threshold of a new chapter, a season of challenges and renewed strength, where the echoes of past hurts were drowned out by the symphony of love, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the beauty of life's ever-unfolding tapestry. And in the quiet moments of reflection and the gentle embrace of Sarah's love, I found solace, a reminder that forgiveness was not just a journey completed, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. Together, Sarah and I celebrated the beauty of our journey, the highs and lows, the moments of triumph, and the lessons learned. In each other's arms, we found a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with compassion, where past wounds were healed with patience and understanding. As we gazed across the bustling cityscape, the sun setting behind the skyscrapers in a blaze of fiery hues, I knew that life's uncertainties had led me to Sarah, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the symphony of love, resilience, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. As Sarah and I navigated the complexities of our intertwined lives, each day seemed to bring new challenges and opportunities for growth. Our bond had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, but the journey of love was not without its tests. One chilly winter evening, Sarah returned home from work with a furrowed brow, a rare sight that immediately caught my attention. We sat together in the cozy warmth of our living room, the crackling fire casting dancing shadows across the walls. "I had a difficult day," Sarah began, her voice tinged with a hint of weariness. She recounted the challenges she had faced at work, the pressures that seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders. I listened intently, my heart aching with empathy for the burdens she carried. As Sarah spoke, I could sense the vulnerability in her words, a reminder that even in the midst of strength, we were both human, susceptible to the uncertainties and trials that life presented. "I'm here for you," I reassured her, reaching out to gently squeeze her hand. "We'll get through this together." Sarah offered a grateful smile, her eyes reflecting the depth of her gratitude and love. "I know," she murmured, leaning into my embrace. In the days that followed, Sarah's workload seemed to intensify, the pressures mounting with each passing deadline and client demand. We navigated the challenges with patience and understanding, supporting each other through late nights and early mornings, finding solace in the quiet moments of connection amidst the chaos. Amidst the busyness of life, I found myself revisiting the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak. The journey of forgiveness, I realized anew, was not just a solitary path, but a continuous commitment to love, to embrace each other's imperfections and vulnerabilities with grace and compassion. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant memory, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's unwavering support. Our interactions, when they occurred, were marked by cordiality, a sign of the healing and growth that had unfolded in the wake of past hurts. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah and I leaned on each other with renewed strength and resilience. We carved out moments of respite amidst the demands of daily life, taking walks in the quiet solitude of nature, indulging in shared hobbies that reignited our spirits, and finding joy in the simple pleasures of togetherness. In moments of solitude, I reflected on the beauty of our journey, the highs and lows, the moments of triumph and the lessons learned. Our relationship had become a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability was met with understanding, where past wounds were healed with patience and empathy. Together, Sarah and I celebrated the beauty of our shared life, the laughter that echoed through our home, the dreams that unfolded with each passing day, and the unwavering belief in the enduring strength of our love. And in the quiet moments of reflection and the gentle embrace of Sarah's love, I found solace, a reminder that forgiveness was not just a destination, but a continuous journey, a testament to the transformative power of resilience, understanding, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. As the seasons turned and Sarah and I continued to navigate the intricacies of our shared life, we found ourselves in a season of reflection, a time to pause, evaluate, and reaffirm the path we had chosen together. Spring bloomed around us, painting the world in vibrant hues of green and gold. The air was alive with the fragrance of blossoms and the symphony of birdsong, a backdrop that seemed to mirror the renewed energy and optimism blossoming within us. Sarah had taken a brief sabbatical from work, a decision born out of a desire to reconnect with herself and the passions that fueled her spirit. Together, we embarked on a journey of exploration, a series of day trips and weekend escapes that offered glimpses into new landscapes and the opportunity to deepen our connection. One crisp morning, we found ourselves hiking along a secluded trail that wound through a sun-dappled forest. The earth beneath our feet was soft with the remnants of spring rain, each step a reminder of the journey we had undertaken together. "I never imagined we'd be here," Sarah mused, her voice a soft melody that mingled with the rustling leaves overhead. I smiled, the warmth of her presence a balm to my soul. "Life has a way of surprising us," I replied, my words echoing the gratitude and awe I felt for the winding path that had led us to this moment. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I embraced the freedom of unscheduled days and unhurried moments. We indulged in leisurely breakfasts at quaint cafes, lingered over sunsets that painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, and savored the quiet intimacy of evenings spent curled up with books and shared dreams. Amidst the stillness of those moments, I found myself revisiting the lessons learned from the crucible of heartbreak. Forgiveness, I realized anew, was not just a gift extended to others, but a profound act of self-love, a choice to release the weight of resentment and reclaim the lightness of being. Emma's presence in my thoughts had softened into a distant echo, a testament to the healing that time had wrought and the peace I had found in Sarah's embrace. Our interactions, when they occurred, were marked by a quiet camaraderie, a testament to the healing and growth that had unfolded in the wake of past hurts. As the days stretched into summer, Sarah and I found ourselves drawn to the familiar rhythms of our shared life, a return to routines infused with a renewed sense of purpose and appreciation. We cultivated new traditions, weekend picnics in sunlit meadows, spontaneous road trips to undiscovered towns, and evenings spent stargazing beneath the vast expanse of the night sky. In the quiet moments between laughter and shared dreams, I marveled at the beauty of our journey, the resilience that had fortified our love, the growth that had blossomed from challenges overcome, and the unwavering belief in the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon. And in the gentle cadence of Sarah's laughter and the warmth of her embrace, I found solace, a reassurance that forgiveness was not just a destination, but a continuous unfolding, a testament to the transformative power of healing, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the enduring capacity of the human heart. Together, Sarah and I celebrated the beauty of our shared life, the moments of connection that deepened our bond, the dreams that unfolded with each passing day, and the quiet assurance that in each other's arms we had found a sanctuary, a place where past wounds were healed with patience and understanding, and where love flourished in the fertile soil of acceptance and gratitude. As we stood together on the threshold of a new season, the world around us shimmering with the promise of new beginnings, I knew with certainty that life's uncertainties had led me to Sarah, a sanctuary where the echoes of past hurts faded into whispers, drowned out by the symphony of love, resilience, and the boundless possibilities that awaited us on the horizon.